My name, Nora Caldwell. My age, 29 years. My father didn't call me by my name for 7 years. To him, I was the help. A ghost in a denim apron whose only purpose was to ensure his marble floors shone brightly enough to reflect his own ego. But when he forced me to kneel and scrub the mud off the shoes of the billionaire CEO he was desperate to impress, he didn't realize he was actually introducing the man to his own boss. I grew up in a mansion that felt like a mausoleum. My father, Richard Thorne, was a man obsessed with the architecture of appearances. He was a high-level consultant who specialized in image management, yet his own home was a theater of cruelty. To the neighbors in our gated community, we were the gold standard. To me, the house was a checklist of chores designed to break my spirit. My mother, Elena, was his willing lieutenant. She didn't work, but she ran the household with the precision of a drill sergeant. "A daughter's hands are meant for service, Clara," she'd tell me, watching me scrub the grout with a toothbrush until my knuckles bled. "If you can't keep a house, you'll never keep a husband. And heaven knows you don't have the brains for anything else." That was the narrative they fed me since I was 12. I was slow, I was plain, and I was lucky they didn't throw me out. They pulled me out of traditional school at 16, claiming I was being privately tutored. In reality, they fired the cleaning staff and the cook, pocketed the savings, and turned me into their unpaid live-in servant. I spent my nights studying in secret by the light of a stolen flashlight, devouring books on structural engineering and business management. I was a prisoner, but I was building a ladder in my mind, rung by painful rung. The turning point came on a Tuesday. It was my 24th birthday, though the only gift I received was a list of instructions for a high-stakes dinner party. Richard was hosting Julian Vane, the Viking of Wall Street. Julian was the CEO of Vane Global, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. If Richard landed Vane as a client, he'd be set for life. "He likes perfection, Clara," my father hissed, pinning me against the kitchen counter. "If there's a single streak on the wine glasses, or if the sea base is even 5 seconds overdone, I will make sure you regret the day you were born. Do you understand me, girl?" I nodded, my eyes fixed on the floor. I spent 14 hours straight preparing. I polished the silver until it glowed like moonlight. I steamed the silk curtains. I cooked a 5-course meal that belonged in a Michelin-starred restaurant. During the dinner, I moved like a shadow. I wore the drab, high-collared gray dress they forced me into, the uniform that ensured I remained invisible. As I was serving the main course, my hand, cramped from hours of scrubbing, gave a tiny, traitorous flinch. A single drop of lemon butter sauce landed on my father's pristine Italian leather shoe. The room went silent. The air felt like it had been sucked out by a vacuum. Richard didn't yell. He laughed, a cold, oily sound. "You see, Julian, this is why you can't get good help these days. Even when you take in a charity case relative, they remain clumsy." He looked at me, his eyes full of a terrifying, quiet malice. "Clean it. Now. Get on your knees and show Mr. Vane how we handle mistakes in this house." My mother leaned back, sipping her Chardonnay. "Go on, Clara. Don't be a burden. Fix your mess." I felt my dignity shattering into a million jagged pieces. In front of the most powerful man in the country, my father was treating me like an animal. I knelt. My knees hit the cold marble, and I reached for his shoe with my serving cloth. "Stop." The word was a command, vibrating with a strange intensity. Julian Vane wasn't looking at my father. He was staring at me. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Mr. Vane, I am so sorry," Richard stammered. She's a bit slow." "Richard, be quiet," Julian said, his voice dropping an octave. He stood up and walked around the table. He reached down and, to everyone's horror, took my hand to help me up. "Is your name Clara Thorne?" he asked. I blinked, stunned. Yes. Did you, 4 years ago, submit a series of structural optimization algorithms to the Vain Global Open Innovation Challenge under the handle Seathorn? The room went icy. I had done that at 2 a.m. on a discarded laptop I'd fixed, using the neighbor's Wi-Fi. I never thought anyone would actually read it. I did, I whispered. Julian turned to my father, his face a mask of pure disgust. You told me your daughter was away at a finishing school in Switzerland, Richard. You told me the girl serving us was a distant cousin with learning disabilities. Julian looked back at me. Clara, those algorithms saved my company $80 million in logistics alone. We've been looking for you for years to hand you the Chief Innovation Officer position and a royalty check that currently sits at 7 figures. He looked at the rag in my hand, then at my father. You have a genius for a daughter, and you've been using her to scrub your floors. We're done here, Richard. In fact, we're more than done. The night Julian left, the house exploded. My father didn't apologize. He didn't feel guilty. He was furious that I had embarrassed him. You think you're special? He screamed, throwing a crystal vase against the wall. You're nothing. You're a maid. That CEO was just being polite. Give me that check when it comes. It belongs to this house. It belongs to me for feeding you all these years. My mother grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You will call Mr. Vane tomorrow and tell him you aren't fit for the job. You'll tell him you cheated. If you try to leave, Clara, we will report you for theft. We've already placed your stolen jewelry in your room. They locked me in the basement that night. No bed, just the cold concrete I had spent years cleaning. But as I sat there in the dark, I didn't cry. For the first time in my life, I felt a cold, hard stone forming in my chest. They thought they had broken me. They didn't realize they had just finished my training. I knew every secret of this house. I knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically and financially. Julian Vane didn't wait for me to call. He sent a security team and a lawyer the next morning. They didn't just get me out. They documented the bruises on my arms and the padlock on the basement door. I moved into a high-rise apartment in the city. For the first 6 months, I worked 18 hours a day at Vane Global. I wasn't just catching up, I was dominating. I took the 7-figure royalty check and didn't buy a car or clothes. I bought information. I hired a private investigator to look into my father's image management firm. I knew Richard was a narcissist, and narcissists always take shortcuts. What I found was better than I imagined. My father wasn't just an arrogant jerk, he was a criminal. He had been managing the images of some very bad people by laundering their money through offshore accounts. Accounts that my mother, in her infinite greed, had been skimming from. I didn't go to the police immediately. That would be too quick. I wanted them to feel the walls closing in, just like I had. Using my position at Vane Global, I quietly bought the debt of my father's firm. He had taken out massive loans to maintain their lifestyle after Julian blacklisted him. I became his primary creditor through a shell company. I started calling in the loans, one by one. I invited my mother to a Women in Tech gala, pretending I wanted to reconcile. I made sure she felt like a queen for one night. Then, I whispered to the right socialites that Elena Thorne's designer wardrobe was actually rented and that her husband's firm was under federal investigation. By the time dessert was served, she was a pariah. 1 year to the day after the dinner that changed my life, I returned to the mansion. I had sent them an anonymous invitation to a settlement meeting to discuss their debt. They were waiting in the dining room, looking haggard. The house was dusty. The help was gone because they couldn't afford a vacuum, let alone a maid. "Clara?" my mother gasped, looking at my tailored suit and the way I carried myself. You've come to save us?" "Not exactly," I said, sitting at the head of the table, the seat my father used to occupy. I pulled out a folder. Dad, your firm owes my company $12 million. You've defaulted on every payment. I'm here to foreclose on this house. Richard stood up, his face purple. You can't do this. I'm your father. And I was your maid, I replied coolly. But here's the twist. I'm not just the creditor. I'm also the person who handed the forensic audit of your offshore accounts to the IRS this morning. My mother started to cry. Clara, please, we're family. Family? I leaned forward. Family doesn't lock their daughter in a basement. Family doesn't frame their child for theft. You didn't raise a daughter, you raised a witness. And today, the witness is testifying. As the police sirens wailed in the distance, my father looked at my mother and snarled, This is your fault. You were the one who insisted we keep her here. I wanted to send her to a state home years ago. My mother's eyes went wide. My fault. You're the one who was sleeping with your secretary and using the firm's money to pay her off. I smiled. Oh, I know about her too. In fact, she's the one who gave me the passwords to your private server. She says hi, by the way. She's also suing you for harassment. The look of pure, unadulterated betrayal between the two of them was more satisfying than any check. They had spent decades presenting a united front of perfection, and in 10 minutes, they were tearing each other apart like wolves. As the officers led them out in handcuffs, my father screaming about his rights, my mother sobbing about her reputation, I stayed behind for a moment. I walked into the kitchen. I looked at the floor where I had once knelt in shame. I took a bottle of my father's most expensive vintage wine from the cellar, poured a glass, and tipped it over. I watched the red liquid stain the white marble. I didn't clean it up. I walked out the front door, leaving the lights on and the door wide open. Let the world see the mess inside. I was finally done scrubbing other people's sins. The best part about being a ghost for so long is that you eventually learn how to haunt the people who killed you.